He put them in his mouth. He drank a little bit of soda or water, swallow them. He go do it again. Good
He's
day.
got them all inside.
Got them all inside. Then when he get back inside the institution, he spit them up.
What's the most you ever heard of those that any one person?
That I ever seen one person bring? I seen somebody bring in like 60 of them.
Edmond says prison officials know this goes on.
It keeps the jail mellow. It keep people patient. You know, they be able to get high and chill. So they like this and let these things happen sometimes.
Come on.
Yeah, that's what they do.
He wasn't just selling to other prisoners. He also masterminded the shipment of more than 10 crack from the coca fields of Colombia to the District of Columbia.
In some ways, he's like the Babe Ruth of crack dealers.
Eric Holder, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, was, until recently, the top prosecutor in Washington, D.C. It was his office that locked Edmond up in the first place.
Tell us the magnitude of his operation from inside the prison.
If you look at it on a monthly basis, he was exceeding that which he did when he was running what, to that time, had been the largest drug operation in Washington, D.C. history.
He was doing more from in prison? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, at its maximum, he was doing about 400 kilograms of per month while in prison, and while on the street, he was doing about 300 at its maximum.
Edmond says it was easy to do from behind bars.
I think it's much easier than when you're on the street.
Easier than on the street?
Much easier because you're right there with the people that have direct access to the narcotics that you need. Colombians, Cubans, Mexicans.
All thrown in together?
All thrown in together.
Thrown in with criminals like Osvaldo Trujillo-Blanco, or as Edmond knew him, Chicky, a convicted felon.
He had a high-profile case. I had a high-profile case. So, you know, we were just wanting somebody to introduce us. We just was waiting for a person to come along and say, this Chicky, this Ray. And we just gonna go from there. It was right there. What else? You know, what else could we do? It's right there.
Chicky, royalty, son of Griselda Trujillo-Blanco, better known as the godmother of the Colombia world, and a founding member of the notorious Medellín drug cartel.
Does it make any sense to put the biggest guy from D.C. and someone from one of the largest cartels in Colombia in such close proximity? You'd know it would be inevitable that they'd come together.
No, I'm not sure that's true. I wouldn't make that assumption. I would think that both people, having been put in federal prison, would have been incapacitated.
But they weren't. A year after Edmond met him, Chicky was released and returned to his horse ranch in Colombia. And that's when business really took off.
So how did you pull it off? I mean, you were doing pretty serious and impressive deals.
Oh, yeah.
From inside, I love maximum security penitentiary.
Maximum security.
Specifically, how did you do it?
Specifically, we would use the visiting room, the telephones.
Specifically, these telephones, conveniently located just down the hall from his cell. Edmond would contact Chicky simply by placing a collect call to a friend in Washington. Every one of those calls was recorded.
Hello, this is the AT&T operator with a collect call. Who's calling, please?
Right.
Will you accept the charge? Uh-huh.
The friend, in turn, connected him to Chicky all the way down in Medellín.
What reason would I be calling out the country? I'm not from Colombia or South America. Or
Here's an inmate that's calling Medellín 3 and 4 times a week.
So you know I'm up to something. Just common sense will tell you. If you got good common sense, it will tell you that I'm up to no good.
In one afternoon, he made 59 phone calls to 5 states and 2 foreign countries.
I thought that we listened in on their phone conference.
Rayful Edmond III, the notorious Kingpin, who was once ruled actually Washington, D.C. during the height of the 1980s, crack epidemic. According to what information we are getting in this moment in time, it's believed that he has died from a heart attack. Edmond, whose legacy is deeply intertwined with DC's most violent years, passed away just months after his release from prison this past July. He was 60 years old. His story is really interesting. They're saying that during the 1980s, Edmond was once a dominant force in the coke trade, working closely with the Medellín Cartel through the Trujillo-Blanco brothers. At the peak of peak of his operation, it was reported that Edmond moved between 1,000 to 2,000 kilos of coke weekly. This staggering influx of, coke turned Washington, D.C. into what was grimly known as, the capital of crime in the U.S., fueling an era marked by surging, criminal acts and community devastation. Edmond's reign came to an end in 1989 when he was arrested and sentenced to life in prison without parole. His operation downfall exposed the grim realities of, coke-fueled violence in the nation's capital and made Edmond a cautionary tale for the generations that followed. However, decades later, his cooperation with the federal authorities on investigations led to a reduction in his sentence, which eventually paved the way for his release earlier this year. So in July, he was released, and he actually made a couple of appearances that sparked mixed emotions from the DC community. While some questioned the former Kingpin's return and his remarks about being better than ever, others were hopeful that his story could serve as a lesson about redemption and change. The news of his passing spreads, and many reflect on Edmond's complex legacy, one that remains etched into the fabric of Washington, D.C. decades after his reign ended.